A very good evening to you and welcome to Idea TV News at 9. I am Cynthia Basi. We begin with the headlines. Information Minister advocates digital innovation for crisis management. Federal government commits to peace and security boosting KWARA state. Satellite Wi-Fi emerges to narrow Africa's digital divide, and Nigeria launches landmark tax reforms to boost economy and transparency. Away from Africa, U.S. Embassy in Israel allows non-emergency staff to leave amid Iran tensions, and ICE releases Colombia students following Trump-MAMDANI White House talks. In business, BOAD Development says to highlight sustainable housing in Lomé, and Pan-African Group AXIAN to launch 100% digital financial entity in Comoros. In health, African governments push back on unequal U.S. health funding deals, and in sports, Manchester City draw Real Madrid in Champions League last 16 again. NSC hands over AHMADU BELLO Stadium to Kaduna State for rehabilitation. Now the news in full. Nigeria's Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, has urged the adoption of digital tools to strengthen crisis communication and national development. While meeting members of the Center for Crisis Communication, led by Chris Olukolade, Idris stressed that crisis today are shaped as much by the speed of information as by events themselves. The minister highlighted the role of responsible communication in countering misinformation, AI manipulation, and fake news. He called for collaboration between government, credible institutions, civil society, and communication experts to build a resilient national information framework. Idris also endorsed proposal for a national crisis communication hub and reiterated support for state policing as part of broader security reforms. The Center for Crisis Communication presented recommendations from its November 2025 symposium, including real-time monitoring of digital threats, journalist training in advanced fast tracking, and the creation of a crisis communication index. Olukolade emphasized that these initiatives are vital for Nigeria to remain competitive in the rapidly evolving digital communications landscape. Moving on, the federal government has assured residents of KWARA State of its determination to restore peace and tackle insecurity with a focus on grassroots engagement. Dr. Abiodun Esset, Senior Special Assistant on Community Engagement North Central, made the pledge during a stakeholders meeting on Omoaran. Esset said President Bola Tinubu prioritizes direct community interaction to understand local concerns. She revealed that a citizens' assembly of youths and stakeholders had been trained in intelligence gathering and documentation to relay community issues directly to authorities. Residents were urged to cooperate with security agencies, report suspicious activity, and avoid paying ransom to kidnappers. Traditional rulers, including the Olumo of Omoran and Olupo of Ajasepo, welcomed the initiative, calling for more security personnel, rehabilitation of key roads, and legal backing for traditional leadership roles. The engagement included representatives from all 7 local government areas of KWARA South, with plans for continued community-based initiatives to strengthen trust and collaboration. In another news, internet access in Africa remains uneven, just 36%, with just 36% of the population connected in 2025 and nearly 900 million people offline, mostly in rural areas. Community satellite Wi-Fi is gaining attention as a way to bridge this gap, providing shared connectivity where terrestrial infrastructure is limited or costly. The model uses a main satellite link to feed local Wi-Fi networks, serving dozens of users per access point. While users pay for tailored data packages, shared bandwidth reduces costs, sometimes below 1% of monthly income in rural settings, well under the continent's 2% affordability threshold. Providers like Starlink, OneWeb, and Liquid Intelligent Technologies are deploying these solutions alongside hybrid fiber networks to expand coverage efficiently. Community satellite Wi-Fi also fosters digital inclusion, enabling online services, public sector digitization, and local community activities. Experts say this approach is transforming community networks into sustainable digital infrastructure, bringing connectivity to previously unreachable populations. Nigeria has unveiled its most extensive tax reform in decades aimed at simplifying the system, eliminating overlapping levies, and promoting fairness for businesses and citizens. The reforms driven by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu are anchored in 4 key laws, including the Nigeria Tax Act and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Act, establishing a unified and modern tax framework. Olusegun Adesokan, Executive Secretary of the Joint Revenue Board, said the initiative collapses nearly 60 taxes and levies into 9 clear categories, standardizes electronic payments, and removes unauthorized collections such as roadside levies. 12 states have already adopted harmonization laws, with more in the legislative process, ensuring consistency across the country. Officials stress that predictable, transparent taxation will improve investor confidence, reduce corruption, and support sustainable economic growth. The reforms also aim to enhance public trust by linking tax revenue to essential services like roads, schools, and hospitals, ultimately creating a fair and coordinated system to drive national development. Let's take a quick break. The news continues when we return.
Wasn't the first thing I built. I also built chat systems and games, study tools and music players, and I'm not alone. J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times before she finally wrote and published Harry Potter. I don't know how to build a dam. I don't know how to get 1 million people involved in anything. Well, let me tell you a secret. No one does when they begin. Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started.
Welcome back. If you are just joining, this is Idea TV News at 9. Now the rest of the news. Away from Africa, the U.S. Embassy in Israel has advised non-emergency staff that they may depart the country expeditiously amid growing concerns over a potential conflict with Iran. Ambassador Mike Huckabee reportedly told staff in an early Friday email that those wishing to leave should do so today, while stressing there is no need to panic. The move follows indirect U.S.-Iran talks in Geneva aimed at averting military escalation over Iran's nuclear program. Washington has simultaneously deployed its largest military force to the Middle East since 2003, though officials including Vice President J.D. Vance have said there is no intention for a protracted war. Other countries including China, India, and Canada have issued similar advisories for their citizens in Iran. While Iran described the Geneva talks as making good progress, the situation remains tense, with both sides signaling readiness for rapid military action if negotiations fail. Still away from Africa, Columbia University undergraduate Amina Aghayeva has been released from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) custody after New York Mayor TRUMP-MAMDANI raised her case directly with President Donald Trump at the White House. Aghayeva was detained earlier on Thursday when federal agents entered the Columbia residential building without a warrant, reportedly using false pretenses. Columbia's acting president, Claire Chipman, said the agents misrepresented themselves as police investigating a missing child, creating a frightened and fast-moving situation for students and staff. Mamdani confirmed that Trump had agreed to her imminent release, which Aghayeva later confirmed on Instagram, saying she was safe. The incident marks a rare public instance of cooperation between Trump and the self-described Democratic Socialist mayor-elect. Their Oval Office meeting also focused on federal support for affordable housing in Queens, highlighting an unusual partnership between political opponents in Washington. Now, in business news, the West African Development Bank, BOAD, will host its second BOAD Development Days on June 11 to 12, 2026 in Lomé, Togo, bringing together policymakers, investors, and technical partners to address financing for sustainable housing across the Wemo region. The forum-themed inclusive housing and energy sovereignty will focus on innovative financing mechanisms, green finance instruments, public-private partnerships, and fintech solutions to expand access to housing funds. Discussions will explore housing as a driver of regional integration, job creation, and climate resilience. The event builds on the inaugural 2025 edition, which concentrated on energy transition and sustainable agriculture and forms part of BOAD's broad strategy to mobilize resources for large-scale infrastructure and development projects in West Africa. Pan-Africa Telecom and Financial Group AXIAN is set to expand its digital banking footprint in the Comoros after securing a decentralized digital financial institutions IFDD license from the Central Bank of the Comoros. The newly fully digital entity will operate under central bank supervision, complementing AXIAN's existing mobile money platform Mbola. The digital financial entity will offer mobile, nano, and micro loans to support working capital, healthcare, education, and informal economic activities across the island, allowing users to access funds without traveling to physical bank branches. AXIAN CEO Erwan Gelbat said this move strengthens the group's fintech operations and promotes financial inclusion in underserved areas. Banking penetration in the Comoros currently stands at around 39%, while overall financial inclusion reached 49% in 2024. The central bank projects that digital and mobile-driven solutions could push inclusion by 75% by 2030. AXIAN plans to use the Comoros as a pilot market with potential expansion to other African countries where it operates, including Madagascar, Senegal, Togo, and Tanzania. In health now, tensions are rising in Africa over a bilateral health agreement with the United States, with critics warning that the deals could force countries to share sensitive pathogen and health data without guaranteeing equitable access to resulting vaccines or treatments. Jane Kaseya, Director General of the Africa Center for Disease and Control and Prevention, highlighted concerns around data governance and pathogen sharing, calling attention to the potential imbalance in the agreement. Zimbabwe recently withdrew from a proposed $367 million deal, citing fears over sensitive health data and describing the agreement as unequal, while Zambia has delayed signing, questioning terms that could impact national interests, including provisions tied to strategic resources. At least 17 African countries have signed similar deals, collectively securing $11.3 billion in U.S. aid, but many analysts worry about concessions unrelated to health, such as reliance on U.S. regulatory approval for new drugs and compliance with political conditions in countries like Nigeria. The pushback reflects broader unease over the Trump administration's America First global health strategy, which has shifted U.S. development priorities and left African nations weighing the benefits of funding against the long-term sovereignty and equity of their public health systems. Finally, in sports news, English champions Manchester City will face Spanish giant Real Madrid once again in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. The first leg is scheduled for March 10 or 11 at the Santiago Bernabeu, with the return leg set for 17th of March or 18th at the Etihad Stadium. City edged Madrid 2-1 in their league phase meeting earlier this season, but the rivalry remains perfectly balanced overall. In 15 previous encounters, both sides have recorded 5 wins each alongside 5 draws, underlining how tight the fixtures has become in recent years. Fans reacted with humor online, sharing memes about the now familiar showdown, while Madrid players joked they expected to draw City anyway. The winner of the tie will advance to face either Atlanta or Bayern Munich in the quarter-finals. Still in sports, the National Sports Commission (NSC) has formally transferred AHMADU BELLO Stadium to Kaduna State government to begin immediate rehabilitation following presidential approval. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed by NSC Chairman Malam Shehu Diko and Kaduna State Governor Uba Sani on Thursday. The redevelopment will expand the stadium's capacity from 12,000 to 32,000 seats, transforming it into a state-of-the-art facility capable of hosting major international sporting events. BICO noted that the project aligns with the federal government's sports city vision, aiming to boost the sector's contribution to Nigeria's GDP and create jobs, while infrastructure remains central to sustaining sports and development nationwide. Governor Sani pledged full support for the project, which is expected to be completed within 8 months, emphasizing its potential to stimulate sports tourism, economic activity, and position Kaduna and Nigeria among leading sporting nations. The initiative is part of broader efforts under the newly established National Sport Infrastructure Development Board to upgrade stadiums across the country. And that's all we have for you on Idea TV News at 9. But before we go, here is a recap of the headlines. We brought to you news that Information Minister advocates digital innovation for crisis management. We also saw that federal government commits to peace and security boost in Kwara State as satellite Wi-Fi emerges to narrow Africa's digital divide, and Nigeria launches landmark tax reforms to boost economy and transparency. Away from Africa, U.S. Embassy in Israel allows non-emergency staff to leave amid Iran tensions. ICE releases Colombia student following Trump-MAMDANI White House talks. And in business, BOAD developments days 2 highlight sustainable housing in Lomé. And Pan-African Group is going to launch 100% digital financial entity in Comoros. And in health, African governments push back on unequal U.S. health funding deals. And finally, in sports, Manchester City draw Real Madrid in Champions League last 16 again, and NSC hands over AHMADU BELLO Stadium to Kaduna State for rehabilitation. Now, do not forget to follow us across all our social media platforms at Idea Television. I am Cynthia Basi. Thank you for watching.